I listen to golden seeds. His excellency prove me wrong. BBC, African politician, empty in me own perception. Politician that I be. If you prove them wrong, then should be settled. The next song is it, I just all for you. If you prove me wrong, and this land for the rest of your life, I know you. But if you change by, then you cover. We say go out, but if you change by, then you cover. We say go out, my shame will walk, my shame will walk, my shame will walk. If you ever give it like the good roads, we will say, this is the one part. If you ever look after we believe, we will say you are sent from God. The one way don't understand. As we forget the people who the one don't understand. As we forget the not because we could not read and write it, for they make them they get away with fraud. Not because we could not take them right it, for the thing I'm saying it not the blood. If you not share, we want to. 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 Everything you say, I be manifesto. The aim is the motor. We hope say it will go. Be ready for the go. We will pull out down. We just stay on this up and down. Now it power to you. Power to you. Power to you. But if you change by, then you cover. With a question, you like Moses, you can't go back to sister, you a massive with the top pot. You salute, you make me not cry for you, oh let. Don't clean you say, we direct. Do you make me not cry for you, oh let. Don't clean you say, we direct. If I shake, we walk go. If I shake, we walk go. If I shake. Right, Famulem, pardon me. At the sitting for Warise, Mohamed Warise, from the program called A Democracy on the Brink. He got struck down by cold, and you know, say on this business, if your voice can't function, then of course you can communicate to the people. So Mohamed Warise got struck down by cold. Myself just had a glass of cool water just now, and the weather already cold, so you can feel my voice suddenly. My voice don't look the contract cold. But however, this not going to stop the broadcast. And I want to say thank you to those of you who don't tune in now. I just want to remind Famulem that today, now the 23rd of October, now Sunday on my side, and the time is just gone past 8 o'clock. Now net na my own side, and I want to welcome everybody to this clip or broadcast from the TNN TV Media Empire. Here we talk to one, I mean in Prince Emil Chroma, and while we go a loop of we intro, I ask Famulem for continue for share. I want to welcome those when we already don't sign in, and want not forget this na the friendly media empire where they bring to una undiluted news about happenings in our country and even on the basis of a global perspective. Don't touch that dial as we get very interesting perspective. Right, Fambulem, once more I bring greetings to Una from the TNN TV Media Empire, where they broadcast on Facebook and YouTube live. This live broadcast, as soon as we don't see the headline, it talks about perspective, whether we institutions of the state can be reformed. We want to look at whether the institutions then they are reformed or not. And obviously the answer to that, let me not even belabor on that, is no. They are not. We institutions are corrupt as ever, and I don't see many broadcast them from your side where we talk about state capture. This effectively get for do something with state capture. So Mohammed Warise is supposed to hold a program today, of course, devoid from waiting me to talk about him is supposed to talk about whether the ECSL is going to cancel the pending elections in Sierra Leone, and something about the economy, whether we economy day into recession. Very important topic for today. Unfortunately, the brother could not make it of cold. However, I'm sitting in for him with a different perspective, which again, I will repeat, has to do with our institutions with a question asked. Can our institutions be reformed? What's wrong with institutions then? Because for address the question, the answer, we therefore understand the questions. We point to institutions, which make them, are they corrupt? Which make them corrupt and begin to identify then key pointers then they, and then hopefully we can arrive at something. There are two parts to this. So first of all, there is a video that I'm going to play, which got to do with what we talk about. Now we go use for close the program. It's about 47 minutes long. This was a broadcast of video that I did many months ago, and it got something to do with policy. We inform the exact thing what we talk about. So you can see from hope to hopelessness. There was a time when we see aliens being get hope, but that hope they don't reduce to hopelessness now. As I speak, it's only going to be worse. It's only going to get worse on the basis of what happen globally. The live viewers, most times can be, but when you go look, the video they generate thousands of viewers, such as yesterday's African Express video will not generate viewers, and if you go now to your site, you will see that we get multiple thousands of viewers will view the video, and they try to understand the sense around this, how this they play out. But it's a lot of algorithm involved, and you get for sit down and try to figure that out. So that in itself is a study on its own, and that's another talk for another day. But today, let's get down to the basic we want to talk about, which is the hopelessness of we institutions them and how we people are not come up from the basis of hope, and whether we institutions can be reformed. Famulem, we know say we get many challenges in our country, institutional wise, and no one talk about individuals. So these challenges then where we get on the basis of institutions are many. There is no if, no but about it. These are just facts. But what we need for do for let we able for change this dynamic. In other words, we institutions then where we know for a considerable period of time now in our country has been hijacked. Every time a government comes, a government use the institutions for achieve their selfish ends. And it's just getting worse because it seems like they at competition with each other for prove who that can undermine the institutions more. This is what it looks like to me. From we experience them, what we don't get, especially now with public sector institutions, we know say we're supposed to take practical measures so that we can use that effectively for let we implement things them we're supposed to be with priority for change dynamics. What are some of these things? What are we supposed to do? And it's not like we don't know. It's just because of the selfish nature in the way how we carry ourselves. Selfish nature in the sense that we know what for do, but we know say if we do them, that go stop certain things them to their own advantage and give the people them the advantage. Because, for example, things that we're supposed to do for benefits the social infrastructure in the country, whether in a hospital or education, but you not do them, you do them the other way, we end up with millions in your pocket and disadvantage the people from probably having more health facilities, more health centers, or more quality health centers simply because you don't divert funds into your pockets. There comes the issue of corruption. We don't say corruption here, it all side, whether na Africa, whether na the West, it all side. Now, how it is managed. Institutions, the way that they use for tamper down corruption so that it's not so obvious. Using regulatory means or bodies for investigate or for look over for being of these institutions so that the institutions they don't get out of hand, and if they do, the individuals then we're responsible, they are brought to book. These are some of the things that we're lacking, and here lies the problem. We know say corruption responsible for inequality. You agree with, isn't it? I'm sure. Today it sounds more like a teaching moment, so now forgive me, and I know that we familiar with most of these things, but we need to talk about them. So corruption, like I say, responsible for boku boku thing in our society. And when I say boku boku thing, I mean the inequality, the state of inequality we exist now in country is as a consequence of corruption. And we don't talk about this many a times. And we're never going to stop talking about this. And we need for come together collectively for talk about them. And the larger or the greater or the noisier the voices or the louder the voices, we know say that the more governments go to hear we, and then no say something need for change. So, in other words, what is responsible for poor social services, like I've been to talk about, it get for do it, then corrupt practices there. Now, irresponsible for all of the things the way they happen wrongfully now in country. And if you look at foreign investment, it's also as a consequence of corruption, we make a law. So you see how we can get for blame government for some of them things there. Because under a corrupt atmosphere, you don't get any serious investment, direct and indirect, in your country. Now, so then cut throat investor them, and then they end up for Canada, your country, then cut throat investor them. And when they see a lot of it, and government, because of their corrupt practices, can only entertain them kind of people in there because there's no desire on the side for change the status quo, the existing status quo, into something more meaningful, more advantageous for the wider, the broader society, other than for themselves. So in the advent of just catering for themselves, they continue for deep dive the country into economic mess, such as what you will find yourself inside today as we talk. Suffice me for say that the excuses then we go to hear from government, certain quarters of government, certain elements of people and where they support government, is now a consequence of what's happening at the globe today, the world today. There is economic downturn, and so we've been driven by a donor economy. We therefore they suffer the consequence of what's happen now the world at large. That much is a very true, but suffice me again for say that we don't go into this for a long time, long before February 24, when the global, sort of world order was disturbed as a consequence of sanctions imposed on another body we make up this global order. And that sanction they backfire, and that backfiring they now we see so we affect then greater economy they are. And then thing that we can treat to we own smaller economies, bear an impact on us. But again, like I say, long before February 24, February 24, now the day where Ukraine got invaded by Russia and set into motion Boku Boku them economically, politically, socially, where they happen, and we not a victim. We manage ourselves well. Had we managed ourselves well, in other words, if we were fiscally disciplined, if we would put measures into place or continue to put measures into place, me not they say that we not for don't suffer the economic consequences there, but of course it would have been far less because we are prepared or we are preparing. But this is not the case. We continue for years stories, being broken about corruption in higher places and the suffering, the mass suffering of we people them. Where we talk with the accountability process or evidence-wise, so we can look at institutions, then we're responsible for providing data and statistics, whether or not the World Bank, whether or not Transparency International, whether or not IMF. These are the stats that we look from the credible organizations. And to waiting at the point to, it seems like there is a serious malfunction where they ongo. And we know they talk about the global side of things now. When they talk about specifically we country, they talk about Sierra Leone. What would we talk about again today? Fambulem is the public sector now we country. Hence, I say we get for play a tape where I do a long time ago. Where at one point there was hope, but now we talk about hopelessness. But because there are many advice in that tape, had we listened to the tape, had measures been taken by the authorities at the time, then at least that will have helped for serve as an advice, way for don't help for put things into place, for cushion whatever disadvantage will have come towards we way. I just want to remind Fabule that this is an emergency broadcast and at the sitting for Mohamed Warise, whose program should have come in at 6 o'clock today. That's about 2 hours and 20 minutes ago. But of course, that program was postponed to another date. But because and I think I did home and I've got time on my hand, so instead of allowing the day for go it by itself just like that, without a broadcast from the TNN TV media empire, I decide for do this particular program, which I believe is very, very important. So what happened to the public sector, then you can suffer from the effects of corruption as a consequence of weak institutions then. So when they see the correlation or the connection, how all of twine together, and therefore, if something of some magnitude get for come to the advantage of the people, them, all a sector there where they complement each other, need for work in tandem. Now the opposite direction in terms of waiting a day per now. Now a day in the corruption, a need for move away from the corruption mode into a non-corruption mode and put things into place, policies into place, into them public sector there, we go work for we people them effectively for we people them. So you see the institutions are weak. One will ask, why are the institutions weak? It's obvious now in country, the institutions are weak because there is no leadership ability, no will on the powers of those that are in power for change the dynamics, because they want to use the institutions to their advantage. Hence, previously on this platform and other platforms, you heard issues bothering institutional capture. Why do you capture institutions? Why they allow institutions them for perform the role that they're supposed for play? The reasons behind the capturing of institutions is because in the bigger scheme of things regarding power, the power play, you want the institutions there for work in your own interest rather than the country's interest, the people's interest. You want these institutions of states for function to your advantage. Now, let me break down a little bit of this for people that we're not going to understand. It's obvious that a good number of people listening now, listening later, will understand. But here is the thing. The institutions, let me give a few. The police, it's one of we institution them. and then get the way out and suppose for function, which is in tandem with the duties or the obligation to the state and therefore the people of the state. So what in the police supposed to do? It in the mantra to serve and to protect. It's a neutral body whose business is to look after the well-being within the police situation. In other words, the law. They don't interpret the way you foul the law. They call you, they have a conversation with you, do preliminary investigation in an open atmosphere and forward them. But we see that our institution has been hijacked. Not too long ago, we see a police chief, and they talk about Inspector Sovula, a very dramatic character, where it just brings, I mean, this was serious because this is not the police who they talk about, but it brings so much stain to the police. But of course, the police institution had been hijacked with for work only for the people and where they run the state to the new advantage. So for bring fair play to the people, you cannot find that anymore. Because why? It only the functioning people. The judiciary, of course, another key important institution of the country. Imagine this get for do with the law, the interpretation of the law. The parliament, another institution. So you see, three key institutions have been hijacked, seriously hijacked, and not only them, many others. So they are only working for the state. How do they manifest themselves? You can see the corruption and this public hijacking of institution through corrupt practices. And within the corrupt practice imply the how they happen. When I say corrupt practice, most of we can think about is the taking of bribery in the form of physical cash, liquid, which is not the case at all times. It comes in various forms, and we should be looking out for these, and we should be calling them out when and if we spot them. Embezzlement of public resources. The embezzlement of public resources. Of course, I talk about bribery, which is always key when one thing where we understand very much when it comes to state institutions and corruption in higher places or in other places. It's about bribery, giving somebody in exchange for something, pro quid pro. You know, I give you something, I expect something back from you. Use on a state level. Forget a deal done. The issue of nepotism. You know, I favor somebody. This na my cousin, this na my brother. I bring and come, you know, na a certain place where in function, they instead of it follow the policies of the place, the institution also will bring and come for function so that it will derive or the derivatives as a consequence of in function following policies, he or she doesn't. But instead, they are already tailored for follow who that put them there and work only for their own advantage rather than for the greater good. Extortion. I mean, you almost like mafia-like. Push somebody against the wall or threaten them, intimidate them, forget something out of them. You get some evidence, body of evidence, sometimes physical one, where instead of you present them to the police, but here is the case again, you cannot go to the police because the police is compromised. You see, all the institutions were necessary for a normal functioning state are completely working against the interest of the state. Graft, give somebody something again, you know, influence peddling. Asabi the minister of state, Asabi the minister of justice, Asabi the president, Asabi the bodyguard to the president. So I use these connections for influence situation. Most likely, I get issues with somebody. All I make them in this way. There is a bidding process. We don't see boku term because government is by law, when it gets a contract, put a bidding out there for Sierra Leoneans, then for bid, sometimes foreign companies, but people that get the required wherewithal for do the job where the contract they ask for. But because I get influence, and the influence means connection, I use that connection for attain me end. So in the end, I not even get a prerequisite for the contract, but somehow I'll end up for land the contract simply because of connection. What do we expect to happen now to that particular issue day is that contract they will not go well. It won't be executed. And if it's executed, it will be of substandard. For example, you dey make road. The money where they give for the road because they don't cut corners in many other aspects. The people that we give them, they don't get them 5 or 10%. The people then they go in between the cutthroat mafia them, then self then get another 5 or 10%. This don't cut down on your budget and you self get expenditures then for make and you get for left with something. What thing happen now as a consequence? Now the venture that you were supposed to carry out now is suffer such. Then we the people they see substandard our country all of the time because of bribery, because of public institutions them being compromised, because of institutions them being hijacked, because of the compromising of policies. The policies are there, but they are not executed because they have been compromised. What think happening with public sector now is far from the effect of did I talk about this? The kind of weak institutions then. Let me understand this. The public sector can suffer as a consequence of weak institutions. No if and but. I don't become for love this phrase, no if and but, which means that there is no go between, there's no gray area. It is designed, that's how it's supposed to function. Unfortunately, because of the lack of discipline, that lack of institutional discipline, with public sector continue for suffer. Now the example and I just give so compromising through corruption. You find the system is so weak and the system they resist change. You don't want for change because you get people in that capacity where they work the where they operate the way then you now social tiffy, social corruption. That's how they are surviving. And at the expense, and this is what I find difficult for swallow, at the expense of millions of the young people. So you find out, say, Pantene host, now one green host, now they good smell they come out because the kitchen is okay. And they cook beef, chicken, fish, you name it. While other people can barely meet. And if we take measures or put measures into place, other people and then go benefit as a consequence. Everybody get little bit. This not the national pie, that's what they call them. In the national pie, everybody, every citizen can able to get something out of them. Not through corruption, just through the legitimate means, executing public policy with fitting with the greater good for the country and its people. There is a need for reform with public administration. And when we make attempts for reform, then policy there, with public sector them, there has to be leadership. This is great. A political will, if you like. Very, very important. For let public sector them be efficient, Fambulem, there has to be a policy of accountability that will be all the time. So overly used, so misused. And not only that, accountability, it also gets in uniform word way, it always the work with transparency. So there has to be accountability and transparency. This is what happens. In the absence of these two, it malfunctions. And that they happen every day in our country. Then two things they are supposed to play a critical role for ensure or guarantee we say we microeconomic now we country is stable and it function well for we people them and therefore we people them then they benefit. For let we work and go towards that direction, and not easy because we meet boku resistance like we don't always see. Boku time we meet resistance them. And we continue for meet resistance now we country. All the resistance the way we meet, because now from powerful people, and we find out say still not they work for we. Because they're very powerful, they use these institutions of state where they no hijack for deprive we the people, from being a benefactor or benefactor to then goodwill there in terms of the public sector, they function well as a consequence of good public policy. Fambulem, the lack of a political will is important for take the project now forward. Political will and that desire where we politicians then get, in other words, the powerful now with society for take something out of nothing and turn on into something for the benefit of the people at large. The political will now for get something done in the interest of the people, in the political will. There are challenges, but because una na powerful people, una can get and done. If una want for get and done, this na the political will. Where there's a will, there is a way. Where there's a way, there should be a will. But too often, with political leadership, they're not prepared for take their step then they so that we people go benefit at large. Too many a times, they do these things only for benefit themselves. This is the fact. This is the objective fact. There is no way you can argue against this. This will happen. There's so much evidence in that direction there, where they point towards that direction, that this is the truth. Nothing but the truth. So let God help we all. You know, the reason why, again, there cannot be there's no political will for Mulem, is the cost. Is the cost with which political reforms. Could they hear this word, political reforms? Same was true the last administration before this one year. Political reform they come with. That cost the. If the political class, the political establishment willing for let go this mass wouldn't it get, then obviously we will see the reform now we public sector we look for. But unfortunately, it really doesn't exist because these guys are not willing for take the heat, if you will like. I mean HIT, not HIT, for take that hit day. In other words, losses waiting than they already get. And this is so prevalent in an everyday situation. Man, they grab for go work, before they go work, he already don't make up in mind I get for what he get for go do for catch. He already don't make up in mind for what he get for go catch and I get for go catch up. And not through some decent means, not through some crooked means. And the pathetic part about that entire exercise day is he or she is going to be depriving thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of citizens the ability for raise their own standard of living. Because waiting supposed for go into various sectors is being diverted into somebody's pocket or group of people in their pockets. That's how pathetic we state the Fambulem. And this is quite quite pathetic, quite important, and why we for continue for talk about them. And these are serious. These are the most serious conversations that we can have. Not to Big Brother house, not to the First Lady in Antiquedom, which we are familiar with, and sometimes it's actual distraction from having a real conversation there. These are real conversations that can change the state of we nation, because we should be calling on we political actors them for say these are the things that we are struggling with from, and as a consequence of una action the way una they take or way una they take, something needs to give in. The political cost, it took heavy for them and they're not willing for let go. But we the people them I believe say can make them let go. Can make them let go. They're not willing for upset the status quo. In other words, waiting they exist. But we the people in making I can say can make that happen. We can make that change they come. But too many a times we are complicit. I can see don't know how they talk against the system, But when the system I get too hard or too critical for the system will try for pull me into that domain there. This is what's been happening from time immemorial. Then go try for pull me into that domain there, so I become a part and parcel of them. Because the mass heavy, it changes your life. And because of the green and insatiable desire of we, mortal them, we quick forget corrupt. But waiting me to say here is, how do we change this so that we people them will able better from this? Because the fact points again to there's so much suffering for we people them as an action carried out directly by the very few in our society, very powerful people. How do we upturn this? Now the question is for the ask we self. Too many of we in our Western world, they languish. Day to day, we dey go give we all. Time, we muscle, we sweat, just for make a living. Well, just imagine that if we state, we nation been a function well, we could have been home, not so. That will not be need for coming here, because the reason why we move in the first place is for greener pastures. So why we government and can't provide these greener pastures where we can stay home, and then we use that with energy and time for the greater good of we country, change the landscape politically, socially, and economically of we political landscape. In other words, the same thing what we do in a Western capital, the Musa we do one for we country, because the government provide the wherewithal, the atmosphere, then produce or provide for we the security USA will be able for exist. Then recognize we rights, so that the give or the Guinea also, where most of we they end up for die. I mean, I can just reflect some time ago from where I come out of the country, how many friends, brothers and sisters we have lost along the way. So many. Now, so they become full of will and desire, but yet things caught up with them. And we are not immune to it. I'm not immune to it either. I am not. But this ain't happen. And 30 days we talk the same thing. And we country them, they refuse for change. For we, the people, that only this handful of people and we they at the seat of power. And then cronies and friends, we talk about nepotism earlier on. Now then continue for benefit, so much so that when you even the talk, you get for be careful so you not antagonize the leadership. You can talk for them, and because you hope them will draw you near. So that stardust, that illegal stardust, that corrupt stardust can rub off you. And of course, your life change. But how do you sleep at night when your life change on the blood, sweat, and death of you fellow citizens? You deprive millions of them of good health facilities, good schools, good roads, just for your own pocket. How much can you put in your pocket? How much can your pocket take? How much of them you will able to eat? And we get the benefit of history behind us for learn about past leaders. What became of them? I mean, you can't be greedy to the extent that you eat till you belly boss. But this is what is happening. Ladies and gentlemen, we did on the TNN TV Media Empire program. We did talk about institutional behavior. We did talk about corruption within we institutions, then how we public sector then they're weak as a consequence of actions taken or not taken by our various institutions, them, how our institutions have been compromised. We get between the two platforms who say we air the program about 50 people them, which is not too bad. Thank you very much for that. This is not the TNN TV Media Empire, just to take a quick break. And when we come back, we go continue. Briefly talk about this. I go play on the tape I've been promised. We want to make this program short, but we will continue for talk. We the ask family, we continue for shape. And also they say there are stars that you can send us on Facebook. So by then stars then they 1 pound, 2 pound, 3 pound, which is almost nothing but very appreciated, because then stars they help we for overwrite the cost. Then broadcast there can come at a cost. As soon as I can see video clarity, streaming quality, graphics quality, all of them come at a cost. And because this we consider for the public service and largely on our own volition, because nobody is forced, here for do anything of that kind. This is only an appeal. Then stars, then they can be converted into money. 10 pound, 25 pound, we can help you for do flyers, we can help you for pay for Wi-Fi, and you name it. So please do send us stars. We appreciate that. For those of you who they watch now YouTube, over 3,500 subscribers. Where are you? We've got about 40 some of you now they watch on YouTube. Thank you very much. But over 3,500 subscribers them. Greetings to una all. Where are you? Join the program. Help us to share. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the TNN TV Media Empire. We the Eri News. Usai, the Eri from any other channel. Usai the Eri News, where they make the news, where other people and they talk. Trailblazing the conversation, the hub of the conversation. Thank you, and we'll come back after this break. Right, we continue with the program, and thank you so much, for sharing. Those of you that are sharing or have shared, thank you so much. What we want to do now, we want to take a quick look at a few of the comments. Comments are not very many, but yet still, let me see comments and recognize few people who are watching on all the channel. Then we'll start with the live stream. Welcome to the Then and Now. Brother Arun Kamara is watching from the Bronx. Welcome to the Bronx. That's in New York, I believe. Mariatu Anderson, good day, my dear. Thanks for you. Thank you, Sister Mariatu. Yusuf Fofana, hello. Yes, hello to you, Yusuf. Madiu Rollins, good evening, Mr. Chroma. Keep on the great work, brother. Thank you very much, Madiu Rollins. It's like for people like you that would never give up, because at least you appreciate what we are doing, and we promise you to our last breath, we'll continue to do what we are doing, because we're doing it in the interest of the people. Beatrice Thompson, good evening, N&T, Sister Beatrice Thompson, turn upside down now and then. That's how it's sweet now. People are not, now and then, because the name's so sweet. So people can do now and then and now. I remember before they named the program, we've been getting so twisted, so confused that we not be know exactly which one for use. Whether the then should come before the now or the now should come before the then, but eventually we settle for the then and now. But we really don't mind where people say now and then. So thank you, Sister Beatrice. of course, she went on to correct it. Thank you so much. It's the TNN. Fatmata Jallo, good day, Mr. Kroma. Yep, our country need a total reform. Flush all the bad apples and start fresh. Yeah, thank you very much. This is what we need to do. And probably at some point we will get for employ the Jerry Rawlings sort of idea towards reforming Ghana. Sometimes radicalism on an extreme scale is needed for change country, and we refuse for change in some degree. Because some of the thieves, the rogues in our society, they're so deeply embedded that for offend them is hard, but they are there. And this is the reason why it doesn't change, because then they inside we institutions as well. This is why our institutions refuse for change. They are in our public sectors, and then public sector, then they never change. It's the same on the same and the same all the time and the time and the time again. So we need for begin for look for them, and sometimes for begin for look for radical measures for eradicate these people. And this is so true. For get we country functioning in the interest of the broader public, these people will have to go one way or the other. Trust me. And at some point, this platform is going to get radical enough for begin for call for that, see how we can mobilize with people, how we can organize with people towards that campaign. The people that will the benefit, they are few. Trust me, they are very few. But of course, if you get money, you get influence. The institutions of state we supposed for function in the interest of the people are compromised and only functioning for the 10%, rather the other way around for the 90%. Then there lies the problem. Okay, we'll get other people the way they advertise. We know saying a virus them, then they use the platform all over for their evil deeds. Peter Dowda, just like to draw your attention to the spelling mistake in your heading, hopelessness. Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, I'm Brother Peter Dowda. Maybe at some point we will correct that. Saudia to Freeman, good evening from Manchester. Hey, Sister Saudia to Manchester, good evening. How are they do? Peter Dowda, apart from the public institutions, what about the Constitution itself? Of course, that's another thing, but the Constitution, Mr. Dowda, complements all of these, and if we can implement the Constitution to the letter, that helps these public institutions, because the laws are there. They are there. We are not willing to carry it out because you get corrupt politicians and public servants in place where they compromise these rules. These are what the things are. Yes, the Constitution probably will need some reforms or some amendments, but that has to go into a referenda, for put the case to the people. And remember, the Justice Cowan Constitution is lying in dust somewhere. And because of critical changes where the late man advised, and they're not suitable for the ruling class, so therefore none of them will implement it. The former government of Ernest Bai Koroma refused. I think that being able to do with the continuation of power, so therefore they not implement them. But a line in dust. This president get history for make if he can call on that constitution day and he been promised for do that and put them out there and play. I'm not parts of it, the constitution as a whole. Many thanks for that. Sister Martha Bangura is watching. Fuad Sise, welcome to TNN. Many thanks. Sister Jallo, oh boy, what's the way forward to have a better salon? At the beginning for things, Sister Fatmata, that it has to be one of radicalism. The approach has to be radical because the people who are in charge of the state, because members say these are the people that they dictate the terms on waiting for happen. There is no political will for bring a change. Some of us who are in different parts of the world or even at home where they advocate for change, no sooner are you brought into the system changes you instead of you changing the system. This is unfortunate. Like-minded people whose interests lie in a better salon need for begin for come together. I've been advocating this for the past 15 years. Think tanks, we can form think tanks. Also, we go to advocate for policy changes when the right time comes. We organize, mobilize, and we go for that change day. It has to be radical. And like I say again, maybe the Jerry John Rawlings sort of approach for change Ghana, to waiting Ghana this so today. Aminata Masjid Malik, Brother Fuad, and others. Sorry, guys, we get technical difficulties early. Many thanks for that. Aminata Maya, tomorrow, inshallah. Okay, I think the sister is to talk about something different on we platform. But again, let me go back to what we've been talking. I want to say thank you to everybody we don't tune in. And Una, thank you so much. We appreciate Una on the Den and Our Media Empire platform. We get more where they come forward, now. But in the meantime, today, we talk about we institutions them out and I check them, how public policy, if we follow them and do them the way I supposed to do, as the tape where they can play shortly go explain. And waiting make we institutions, we public sector is weak as a consequence of policy the way we need to follow. Now institutions then waiting is say and how for make the public sector they are very, very strong. The exchange of favor in return for a favor, this now one of we major problem now we country. The exchange of favor for another favor, quid pro quo. That's a noun. Now in the problem now we country. This now huge impediment block now with public sector reform. Where we can do all the talking. They talk about government commission inquiry under for look into, whatever way, why would they get things wrong? But we find out, say that then public inquiry there it is politically motivated, sometimes slash witch hunting, because they are only being done for hound other people belonging to the other side of the political aisle, the political argument, the political sphere. That's what it does. No good intention for study the outcome of a good and thorough investigation into why we public sector is weak, why it not serve the people in a way that is supposed to, and then findings then if we do a thorough investigation should inform the outcome of the investigation and therefore lay out the principles which we will eventually follow, which will benefit the nation as a whole. But there's no such will, hence the lack of political will for do such. Them people and them power them woman and we get so much substantial power, then they take advantage of weak institutions them for gain favor and unfair advantage in return for let and give them people and them political support. The action them of them kind of and can lead to we institutions them where the official them where they lead them. Essentially, we can call them puppets. We can dance or dance to the tune of the people and where they pull the string like tetemuke. Okay, the rule where they govern social, we're supposed to help we for understand we social cohesion as a people. Okay, the institution that we're supposed to help that they are compromised, deeply compromised. Let's take a look at the judiciary. It will be impartial in rendering justice. Needless for lay I make the case then because I believe the people that they watch. No, see, this is not the case. Almost every other case has been partial, politically motivated and driven, in which one side is disadvantaged, and most likely the people in power, it plays all in outcome them, all the case them way they render judgment on in favor of those in power. And this has been true for past administrations. Every time the state institutions are compromised. This is now one serious problem. Most of the jurisdictions them, they need to stop the actions them we they make with justice system, look like unfair to we people them. There is no political leadership, no political will in that direction. Therefore, say, look, act in an unbiased fashion. That means an institution such as the executive will wield more than enough power, where the constitution, the reviewed constitution of the late Pakawan, Justice Kawan, spoke of for strip that institution there of some of the powers, which president after president not get mind for do for strip them out of some of the powers where they get. We're so boku that if you mean get weight and then wear and then bing like something physical, if a weight and down to a point where they're not able to move, none of them are willing for compromise that. None of them. Here lies the problem. President Bio, you've been promised we say you go look into them. Not to the failure of others go make yourself not do them. It shouldn't be tit for tat, an eye for an eye. But 5 years, 9 don't go so. 9 they go so, and we not see you do anything about this, sir. Nothing about this. So we hope say maybe you will introduce this at some point of the few months then we left, and they talk about on a realistic basis. On a realistic basis. Family, when it comes to public sector reform, the effort we need for bring we stakeholder them on board, including those of us we not really significant in the bigger scheme of things. What do I mean by this? I mean lower groups in the society. And then they do this as a consequence of level of how do I call it, in terms of wealth or what have you. I just had they look at the group structure, because the fact is you get very powerful people in the state, and then you get institutions of the state who are also powerful people because they make decisions. You get the lower level of people them where they can help for make decision, but sometimes and most times not only when elections come, they're not like waiting, then they see and then can go make the decision. But what I mean, try for say is that for let then reform effort there, make effort for bring stakeholder then on board, which for include everybody, is also lacking now in society. You hardly barely can find inclusivity, and this now we need for open up. We need for open up this space. It's a democratic space. We really need for do that. Family, I think say I go stop here for today. I would like for make this a two-part show. The next one where we go do the part 2, we're not going to show the video, but I want to introduce at this point a video where we've been do many months ago. We've been doing this video many months ago, where we talk about the public sector, we talk about public policy. Basically, this video was around public policy. So therefore, let's see whether we can get this video going. And before we get a video going, let's do a quick break. And then when we come, we'll go straight into the video. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. And keep tuned, don't touch the dial. We get a video we can play for now. This is the TNN TV Media Empire. Okay, we are back, and we promise you we can play video for now. We will do many months ago, but it obviously get relevance to this particular broadcast. And just for reminder, now this was an emergency broadcast. We've been getting brother Warise. We've been supposed to talk on a very important topic today, but he was struck down by cold. And when I know say when you get cold, especially if it's severe, your voice gone or partially gone. And in this business, you need a very sharp voice, a very clear voice. And therefore, we've been here for postpone the show. But looking back, I've been get time on my hands. And instead of you let a prime day go by, which is Sunday, this is prime time, decide for come on live and have a conversation and keep the conversation going. Respect the views of others, as I would expect others for respect the views of ours. But it not mean say we can have a conversation in between and then disagree for agree. Like I promise, here is the tape. Today, now the 23rd of October, 2022. Me once again now, host and presenter, Prince Emil Kroma.
Then and now, I am your host and presenter, obviously, and my name, some of you may already know, but some of you may not know, maybe first timers. I am Prince Emil Kroma from the channel Then and Now. Right. So let me see if I can get some music going. I'm just playing this song and dedicating the song to the people of the Middle East. The peace process, if there's anything called the peace process in the Middle East again. But obviously, to 60 or so Palestinians that lost their lives during protest on the basis of an action taken by the US President Donald Trump. It was a terrible place where Jews and Muslims, pray together, they worship together, and they've lived for thousands of years. What has suddenly gone wrong? And it's just on a downward trajectory. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, the reason why we're airing this video, of course, I'm not going to talk about the many problems that we've had today, and we've ended up here. Hopefully this one goes through. But I wanted to talk about policies based on evidence, how effective those could be for people of our kind that come from deprived areas, deprived countries that have the means, the wherewithal, the resources, the minerals, but it's not properly managed due to policies that are not effective, that are not thoroughly thought through. And in the end, they become toxic for us. And instead of benefiting from them, they become, the enemy of the people. In this regard, ladies and gentlemen, we do know that a plethora of corruption and maladministration of the African continent honestly has been the nemesis of development in the entire continent. And the country where I come from, Sierra Leone, is no exception. So we know that the lag behind what you would call strategies in the proper administration of revenue, the revenue end of things, they're really lagging behind. You could say corruption and many other things, but it's all back again into policy, which I want to talk about today. So what we're going to attempt to do here now is to look at how issues relating to that of accountability and transparency, pair them together. It's a commodity or an item or items that are very scarce. And these scarcity of this particular two items, accountability, I call them items, and transparency, are hurting the prospect of development through the kind of poor policies on whether you want to say mortality, the reduction of mortality and mortality rate, the unemployment of 60% of youthful population, which is having a backlash, much more social problems that trickles down again to the very government. So why not sort it out there, up there, before it comes down, because it ends up with you again. And then the citizens as a whole, en masse, they suffer, okay? Poor infrastructure, and there's always this vicious poverty cycle. And much more through that we could do to avoid all of these, if only we can think about public policy in the sense of well thought through academic research, and etc. And this well thought through policies based on academic evidence is really, ladies and gentlemen, what I want to talk about today. To begin with, every policy research and analysis does ask questions. Every policy research and analysis does ask questions. Relevant questions, I would say, because that's the beginning of a carefully thought out process. That is the beginning. So questions that it will be asking will be like, why? Because if you put forth a policy, you have to know why you are putting forth the policy, or people are going to be questioning, why is it? That has to be thoroughly explained. Ladies and gentlemen, this is key. First question will be why? Why is the policy? And let's say something quickly. Let me say something quickly. Why the why question is effective in pursuit of policy. Sometimes policies are not carefully or well thought through. Sometimes policies can be flux. Policies have to emerge from the effect. That's why the definition of policy in itself is kind of significant, because policy sounds simple, but you might say it's basically rules on what an administration or a government or an authority does and what it doesn't do. It doesn't necessarily mean what it does. It also means what it doesn't do. But it has to be carefully thought out, which in the end should be in the interest of the people. So the question why is, what is the agenda? What is it? Why is it? What is behind it? There's also the question of for whom it is done. Remember, I just said it should benefit, in a social sense, the people. So for whom is this policy being done? So you're asking this question, who are the beneficiaries? Who are going to benefit from a policy that's been proposed? A policy that is time scaled, in other words, a question asked when, that is the due date. So a policy that is time scale is a good policy. I mean, these are all the hallmarks, the good traits of the development of public policy. So these key questions, they have to be asked, okay? They really need to be asked. Another thing we need to be careful about in terms of public policy, again, that falls into the questions that I've just asked, but I'm just trying to reiterate, which is who commissioned the policy? Who commissioned it? So we want to look at the independent policy. So there are no ulterior motives that are certain, you know, in the realm of things. Who are those that are going to benefit? Because you can be in a position of trust, in a position of power, and you are enacting policies which you will derive the utmost benefit from because there are motives behind it. Instead of benefiting the people as a whole, in the end, the reason why you ask for this policy to be enacted is because you've got an ulterior motive which will be of benefit to you either in the now or in the near future. So you want to know the independence of such policy, who commissioned it, who is funding the policy, what's the location, where is it situated, okay, and the potential influence. That's what I'm saying. The potential influence that can be put or exerted on those that are responsible for developing the policy, the researchers, those that are looking into it. So if a politician has got ulterior motive, what's going to happen basically is they're going to exert pressure on the policy makers. That's why the time scale of the event is important. That's why the independence of the important. Many others to those questions that we've just asked. So in policy, public policy, there are two kinds of policies which are kind of significant. Slight definition in meaning, variance in meaning. They're not the same. They sound the same, but there's a variance. Okay. These two types are a policy of analysis and an analysis of policy. It's difficult for you to understand, the difference there because they almost sound alike. It's just like it's been reversed, it's been tweaked. Most likely been reversed, a policy of analysis and an analysis for policy. So though they sound alike, let's bear in mind that there's a slight variance, there's a slight difference between the two. When you're conducting an analysis for policy, ladies and gentlemen, you eventually do one thing, which is you advise and you inform policy makers. You advise and inform policy makers. And what do you advise them on? The next step that they need to take. Again, two types of policy analysis. A policy of analysis and an analysis for policy. In conducting an analysis for policy, you eventually end up, ladies and gentlemen, informing, telling, helping the policy makers with what is supposed to be the next step that they need to take in the pursuit of the policy that they are working on. Cost-benefit analysis, impact analysis, forecast analysis. These are all the traits, and this is what these policymakers are going to be armed with. What this does do is it helps inform these policymakers on the decision process. We're running kind of late, ladies and gentlemen, so we'll try to make it a little bit fast because I want this video to end hopefully in half an hour's time. In this pursuit of policies that are evidence-based, that are supposed to be effective after asking all these questions, it is imperative upon us to move away from ideology and probably, or most likely, settle down to pragmatism, which will be it will be almost science-based, if not science-based. Economic forecasting is central to all of this, because what this does again is it directly informs and helps those that are trying to effect a policy on the decision-making process. Okay, that was policy of analysis. Remember, I said two, there are two. Now let's talk a little bit about analysis of policy. What this one does is it more or less refers to the in-depth understanding of the policy context, more or less the effective understanding of the policy output. In the policy context. So an in-depth understanding of the policy context is what an analysis of policy more or less refers to. I was just drinking from an Union Jack cup, which I used to toast the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. That's Meghan and Prince Harry. So policy output and policy outcome are all processes of making policy. So within this, what we then do, we can then think of more scholarly approaches. I'm introducing the word for the first time after talking about academic-based evidence studies in terms of public policy or policy analysis. So in analysis of policy, we have to refer to an in-depth understanding of the policy in a contextual way. So the policy output and outcome are the processes of, making a policy. So within this context, we can think of more of a scholarly approach to policy research. So understanding the context, ladies and gentlemen, of policy, the relationship, the process, the type of influences, the relationship among the many, many actors who will be partaking in the process, the type, the output of certain policies, the benefits to the beneficiaries of the policy is what we think about in this sort of analysis. So we move on to policy research issues. Okay, there are particular problems when you're conducting policies, especially so. And remember that this is related to where we largely, those of us that are watching this tape, largely where we come from. So there are always particular problems. I spoke of it at the beginning of this tape. When we are conducting policies in countries which are in the developmental stages or transitional countries, such as ours, that's why I've chosen this topic. So the series of problems that we have to bear in mind is the shortage of reliable and valid data. We really, really need to keep that in there in mind. Okay. There's also another key thing. Most of we is the struggle for fair and word. I want to use the appropriate word, but this over-reliance on international NGOs, okay, for data, it can sometimes penalize we, if not most of the time. Me personally want to think, because I've had the experience, okay. We over-rely on them too much because we have come to trust them. We trust them more than the locals. And the locals, and then they feed them this information. Remember earlier on, we talked about the independence, of policy making, the process. The independence is quite critical. Why? Who? Time scale. So this is it. So we over-rely on international NGOs, then at the gun. And sometimes the manual within the give, because remember, say these NGOs are reporting to somebody from the outside. The outsiders potentially could have interest in these policies than we they want enact. Remember, we talk about the influence, the potential influence of them policy there. The reasons then why most of the policies then can fail. but also the expectations, the objectives where they can set for we, not right. The expectations and the objectives, that they set for us are just not correct. Because if you ask these NGOs, you use your own measurement. Remember, we're talking about states back home. And then the NGOs headquarters are based here in Europe, and the measurements that they are using for the NGOs on the ground to use to develop the data, what they measure, how they publish their records, the weaknesses and distribution of the data is problematic in itself. So once you set us that bar and the bar is high enough, and then it becomes difficult because it doesn't relate directly to us, or you need to have a better understanding of the construct of these transitional states. Ladies and gentlemen, we are already about 20 minutes, 21 minutes approaching into this. And like I said, in half an hour's time, we will end this. There will be a part 2 later. So some of the data, as are provided by these NGOs are quite critical, honestly. Remember what they measure, how they measure, what they measure, who provide them with the wherewithal, who provided them with the manual that they're going to be using. Have they really understood the nature, the culture? Because this is paramount of the country. If no, then obviously the policy eventually is on a path of disaster. So qualitative research, we also know, is rare in this part of the world. Most of what I'm talking about in terms of policy is looking at retired brigadier in which he talked about policy and in inauguration. Today we focus on one. In subsequent broadcasts, we'll focus on others. In terms of agriculture, I talk about agriculture in which he will implore or ask local banks for lend the private sector for agricultural purposes, which is very good. A healthy nation is a nation that's well-fed. A well-fed nation is a nation that thinks, that develops, that innovates, that creates. So agriculture is very paramount, and we get a kind of soil. So the president spoke of increasing food production, attracting reliable private sector players. This is all good, supporting private sectors for large-scale agricultural production and processing, not only the production, but also the processing and marketing. So you see, that's why I say I'm getting really excited, because the president is not only thinking locally, he's also thinking beyond the borders, beyond the shores of his country. So talking about processing and marketing, this is good. So support to local industries, engage in the fabrication from tools, for farm tools and supplies for other farm products. Another good one as well. So once that is done, it also provides jobs. I understand, say you get about 200,000 people that are reliant, that are effectively employed within the agricultural area of the country. Directly and indirectly, there are 600,000 other people that are indirectly benefiting from agriculture. The president also talked about mechanisms into place for public-private sector in terms of tractor management, which is about the rehabilitation of feeder roads, linking the farming communities. But brilliant. I mean, this man, he get the experience anyway. He was there, he's been there, and now he's back. I see no reason why this guy should not succeed. If he doesn't, posterity will never forgive him. Okay? Posterity will never forgive him. Because this is all critical and this is good. So he talked about cash crop, how it constitutes a major source of forex. Of course, no country is an island. We deal with others. So we sell with crops there abroad, we're able to generate foreign money. So that foreign money, they come to the country, we're able to use them for do other things them we regard, with international commitments. That's good. So his administration will focus on the rehabilitation of existing plantation and establish new ones, focusing on cash crops. So it will also help to facilitate the establishment of cash crop cooperative and provide training in processing to ensure cash crops become competitive for our people, for his people. Brilliant. He talked about the tourism industry, which we will talk about in a subsequent broadcast, how it's underdeveloped and underfunded. Now that we know in the previous administration that the economy had been diversified, it has been taken from the direct focus of mining minerals, which we know for a long time, into ecotourism. That area, they needs to be developed, really needs to be developed, because we stand to profit a lot. So all this come in the process of making of quality, well-researched, scholarly, evidence-based, academic-based public policy. This is what is required to get these things to be very effective. So we need for focus on qualitative research, which is quite rare. It's hard for we find out in our part of the country. So even when you find them, not to better one, and we need for focus on this. So research, the president talk about stakeholders. So we also need for do research on policy stakeholders. So if you try for focus a policy, especially on the agriculture one I just talked about, in which you take into consideration your stakeholder them, then it's imperative on you, sir, and your administration for conduct qualitative research on your policy stakeholders. Very important. Okay. So we are already 26 minutes. We've got about 4 or 5 more minutes, and then we'll try for end this. We'll continue another day. So we've got unclear procedures. It's obvious there are unclear procedures at government levels on conducting and the use of policy research. This needs to change in order for the policy to be effective. So in terms of government, you sometimes want to ask, although you should know this already when it comes to who actually conducts policy research. Again, remember those two policies: analysis for policy, policy for analysis. So if you're asking that question about government levels on who is conducting the use of policy research, when you talk about analysis for policy, it's normally done within the ranks and realms of government department. Now we're talking about civil servants. They definitely are responsible for this, and they will be conducting, not only conducting, but also commissioning such researches. So if we look at the scarcity, ladies and gentlemen, of resources within the context of few things. One, the weakness in the distribution of data, which we talked about, and the qualification or the rareness. Of course, that's a new word because I put up on Creole bit. But anyway, the way how qualitative research is rare in especially when it comes to stakeholders, you can't hardly find that in our country. The unclear procedures at cabinet level and the low service morale, civil service morale, lack of pay, lack of incentive, lack of professionalism. All of this, if the president is really serious, he really needs to focus on this. For only with these things being taken into consideration, can policies that he wants to effect, which can have a positive effect on his country and countrymen, which I believe are his intention, will work. So these are things that need to be taken into consideration, sir. So if we take into account how this policy making, can be politicized, that also you need for consider. So move ministers then away, or get a body, an independent body, where go scrutinize these people that have been commissioned, to do these researches, the civil servants, to make sure that it's not politicized, or tell you minister them for back away. Not begin the contract for influence the policy, which will go your own way because you want them to go your own direction, because probably you look at political gains or political scoring points. You can actually really avoid that. Okay. So public policy, from the beginning, we talk how complex it is. Complex to the point where it looks like, say, hard for define. And hard for define, because it's something complex, then there are some technical difficulties there in trying to define it. Okay. We also say it basically lie on waiting people, not only people, not ordinary people. I mean, again, for be people in places of authority, people in places don't do. That's policy. That's public policy. Okay, but it has to be about a rule-based system in helping people. This is quite fundamental. Okay, where we try for understand public policy, we tend for look at potentially people that we don't write books on the situation there, because remember we talk about academic based policy. So somebody will look up, you have been try for look at the definition for public policy. Of course, there are many out there. Okay. Two people I want to look up just quickly, briefly, for the benefit of this broadcast, the listeners and viewers, is a description, an explanation of the causes and consequences of government or governmental action. And this was by an author called T. Dye back in book where he published in 1991. In 1991. So the description and explanation of the causes and consequences of government's action. Remember, that's what we said. Government obviously is authority. So the cause and consequences of actions taken by government is what will be regarded as public policy. I also look up somebody else, Paul Kearney or Kiney. I don't know whether I pronounce it right. He writes something, a piece, an academic piece, academic journal, with a title, Politics and Public Policy. I mean, these two then kind of intertwine. Okay, so if you listen to all the things I don't say about that, we come to a point where Paul Kearney try for define them as the first thing that we do when studying public policy. This is not Paul Kearney. The first things that we do when studying public policy, we get to understand on how to define them. Okay, so public policy, according to Paul Kearney, is the principal guide to action taken by the administrative, executive branches of the government of the state. I carry on now my own way because I understand what they say. Branches of the state with regard to the class of issues in a manner consistent with law and institutional custom. So one look long, other one look short, but basically the same. The cause and consequences of government action. That's T. Dye 1991, and Paul Kearney in say action. Is the principle government will take, or administrative or executive branch. So when this is Paul Kearney back, because it's politics and public policy. When you talk about in politics inside public policy, it becomes disastrous because there are many other sources of legitimate knowledge, and the evidence cannot and should not. The evidence cannot and should not become an alternative to political choice. And this is critical, and I will read this again. This is critical. When it comes to politics, it becomes really disastrous because even though there are many sources of legitimate knowledge and the evidence, we can't afford to put those aside or make them politics become an alternative to political. Political choice become an alternative to evidence-based policy. We shouldn't do that. That's why most times these policies they fail woefully. While of course we agree, say politicians then get for use their judgment, but that judgment when politicians and they use not to like medicine. The judgment being used that is being asked for politicians to use. It's not like medicine. because medicine, by and large, is science. It's proven. It's a proven science. So that judgment is not based on proven science. So while we go listen to the judgment of politicians, okay, we know say that waiting and say not likely means say that that's not the fact. So you want to move away from that and look at things that are based on evidence that comes from the mouth of scholars, people that have done their researches based on evidence. Now, Tony Blair, one of the most popular politicians in our time, both globally and locally, until he gets this Iraq debacle where he go join George Bush, you know, we help for denting in reputation so badly that how many years now he's left office is still struggling. One said, in terms of public policy, and I quote, it matters what works. If it works, fine. If it doesn't, why bother? Just put it aside. That's Mr. Tony Blair, former British Prime Minister who won 3 consecutive elections. I also want to quote another Labour politician, Michael Foot. And a short one, Michael Foot. I mean, policy, because it's based on evidence and therefore there's going to be many arguments, politicians don't have the patience for this kind of stuff. They just want to get things done. Remember, by and large, politicians just look for the time. Therefore, they score points and points and points that will keep them popular, especially in an age of populism. Politics now is an age of populism. Donald Trump, Jeremy Corbyn, and etc. So they just want to get the thing done. And people and benefit, of course, benefit. So Michael Foot said, I don't want evidence. It gets in the way of my arguments. That's Michael Foot, a former Labour politician as well. So it's important that policies are based on evidence. We see how we are now struggling in terms of Brexit. That's another big one. We will find time probably to talk about this. It's another big one. Brexit, it wasn't well thought through. People presented alternative facts rather than academic facts. So today, hence, the struggle continues on the basis of an issue as big as a nation, a mighty nation as Great Britain, removing herself, you know, from a body. So they're not saying that she should not have removed herself, but the basis that we know now for her removing herself were based on alternative facts instead of real facts, evidence-based facts. But today we are talking about other countries such as Sierra Leone, etc., etc. So it's very, very important, ladies and gentlemen, that when it comes to policy, public policy, we should conduct ourselves rationally. Approach should be rational. For rational approaches can bring up solutions. So we need for conduct things like benefit analysis and implement what make sense. It should not be like Donald Trump just sweet talking people and telling people, you know, yeah, the punchlines, and automatically, and there he goes. He's now in the White House. He's got a support base, but the United States, by and large, is being redundant on the world stage now. See their political allies and friends across the other side of the Atlantic talking about Europe. In the Iran deal, see what's happening. It seems like the Europeans have finally found a backbone, a spine to stand on and say, no, enough is enough. Can't continue to be vassals. This is huge in international relations. This is huge in terms of geopolitics, what is happening, okay? The United States unilaterally removed herself from a climate deal. I mean, you got friends. This is what Donald Tusk said. If you've got friends like that, what's the use of looking for enemies? Wow, that was charged, that was loaded. But from what Europe is saying, even though people had their doubts, it's beginning to look more and more like they will remain as it is. When I say as it is now. So they're turning their back away from their friend in the United States. They are turning their back away from their friends in the United States. Okay? And they are trying to take their own path. Because why? Their very existence is threatened. Economic interest, which is significant. I mean, they stand to lose so much, from Iran. So immediately when the deal was done back with President Barack Obama, the Europeans ran in there with their multi-billion pound companies. The multinationals are all in there. Boeing, the Americans, of course, are there as well. But Europe, Airbus, okay, Air France, the hotels, the hotel chains, they are all there. The exploration phase of petroleum gas, which Iran is rich in, Total, BP, they're all in there. And then the president is trying to move them and deprive them of this. Is he going to substitute what they are going to lose there? I don't think the Europeans are going to do this. There are many questions, and people are sort of pessimistic when it comes to this because it's huge, and I can understand, but it seems like there's much to lose. So the Europeans are saying no. And in fact, what they've done, they've enacted, I think there is a clause in their constitution which goes back like since 1996 or so. And for the first time, they've enacted it. They've made it active. In other words, they will use that to protect their companies from sanctions being threatened. Wow, sanctions being threatened by your friends, that they're going to sanction you as well. Anyway, let's move on. That's why it's good to come up with rational evidence based on academic research. Do your cost-benefit analysis and always make sure that you roll out, you implement what makes sense. Evidence-based policy, ladies and gentlemen, evidence-based research is relevant for exploring issues and concepts of interest to the public, whether it's one of poverty alleviation, the healthcare system, free healthcare, free education, as Marabio promised, violence against women, reorganizing the healthcare system. It has got to do with public policy. So, ladies and gentlemen, we should be ending this video any moment from now. I think I've said enough for today, but evidence-based policy is important. I'll just say one or two more things quickly, and then we end this video, which is the President of the Republic of Sierra Leone, His Excellency retired Brigadier Julius Maada Bio, promised free education and many other things. I'm imploring on you, sir, in order for this to succeed, if you listen to this tape, then you will see all the hallmarks of success, what needs to be done. It has to be based on academic, proven, scholarly research. Let's try to promote qualitative research, especially on our stakeholders. In terms of this free education and many other of your policies, for them to be effective, sir, you need to do this. This is about public policy. And this is the way forward. Those questions that we asked from the beginning, commission it. Why was it commissioned? When? The time scale, due date, beneficiaries, all are critical to all of this. So only when these are asked and is carefully thought through, can the policy in itself be effective. So as researchers and members of scholarly group who try to call on expert explanations or in-depth comprehension of various social or economic problems, the starting point is going to be on evidence-based, not on alternative facts as Donald Trump. It's got to be based on truth. A truth which is based on irrefutable evidence. And that irrefutable evidence is solidly or must solidly be anchored on research and analysis. I will end with the word of a Labour politician. Maybe the next broadcast will be about conservatives or Republicans or Democrats, who knows. David Blunkett, another one-time serving minister under Labour, Tony Blair's government, and subsequently the man who succeeded Tony Blair, Gordon Brown. Mr. David Blunkett once upon a time said, "A good government A good government is a thinking government. Rational thought is impossible without good evidence. Social science research is central. Social science research is central to the development and evaluation of policy. Ladies and gentlemen, I will end here for today. Next week, we'll continue starting off with the limitations of policy analysis. I want to be talking about public analysis now. There's a likelihood that we will have here on interview and human rights and immigration lawyers. So for those of us who have got human rights problems, immigration issues, we are going to be having an immigration and human rights lawyer right here on this channel, God willing, next week, provided that all of the apparatus are in working order. So for now, I've been your host and presenter, Prince Emil Chroma, saluting you all for watching the video. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel. It's important. Your comments are also highly, highly appreciated. Please send me your comments. For in so doing, we can understand the way forward. What did we do? What did we do? How did we do what we did? What do you appreciate? What you don't? But above all, your subscription is critical to continue to do. On this note, I say thank you very, very much.
Okay, family, very many thanks. I like the way the numbers they reduce because I think everybody sense the production they come to an end. But I'm really, really thankful to you guys for watching this very important broadcast. Really, really thankful. I wish you now all a blessed week. Obviously, there's a question where we end with whether we satisfy or we think or believe that whether the government they shape a better future, and they talk about the current government, than the one they inherit. Whichever way, we wish for the greater good. But all said and done, thank you so much for watching. And until we see again during the course of this week, who they come with more heavy programs, I promise you now. Not necessarily get for be an interview, it can be a monologue, because sometimes they can finally we talk. And one thing I want for make una for understand as well is we held show they come, we did deep into talks with them. The lady we get for here the talk. In fact, we at the stage where we just they try for decide a date and a time. I think this is where the difference lies. But in principle, she has agreed. So I can assure you, I say there will be a health show, and we'll try for work around and accommodate in your own preference. So definitely we can do that. We also they try for bring up a program where we're not getting name yet, but something around Blow Mind. I think other platform then they hear something like that, but don't they get calls from other people then? It's like, well, then enough need for air some show of this kind where we go call in and blow mind and see waiting in now we mind. And I love this idea very much. But not a thing where you just go to one click, bam, and then you're there. Again, it's as a consequence of policy. We get for craft something because it's not based on knee-jerk reaction. Some of these programs can be short-term, but even short-term get time scale. What how you want for doing? Which period? Testing period, piloting period? Is it long-term? You know, the outcome of some investigation go get for be informed about waiting we find out. So thank you very much again once more. And this is the end of the program until we see again during the course of the week where hopefully Mr. Warise will have healed up within cold, where we wish him a speedy recovery. And Cheroba, as usual, will be on top of his game. We see the attack on media, and some of the attack actually doesn't make sense to me. You know, I sit back and just watch. But you can see, I can say this clearly, some of them are just paid agents for can't disturb the normal flow of good conversation with hard-hitting evidence. This is not the height of investigative journalism. No one is going to deny that. And the people who are coming, some of them who are coming with these attacks, you can see that the attacks are empty. Now, empty shell, just they come for can't disturb. Look, one good advice before I finally leave. If you're going to attack the brother, because everybody is interested, the man has done a phenomenal job. You cannot question that. That legacy is laid down. And some of them, you know, yeah, I mean, the brother in level side he operates, you know, it's way high there. Yeah, definitely. So maybe you get evidence for Upton what he's doing. This is what we are interested in. We are not saying that you should not air your views, that you should not run commentary contrary to what he say. But where's the metal is it made up of? Now he had to say. So it sounds very much to me like these are paid agents, people them way get interest just for Upton waiting the man don't do. But I will leave this as it is, as the man himself, they get thick body armor way for let you metal pierce them, then you back for go to factory for go redesign and understand the armor is made up of. Again, ladies and gentlemen, this is me, a TNN Media Empire broadcast. I've been your host and presenter, Prince Emil Kromade. Wish you now all the best of the week. Until we see again during the course of this week, can I wish you all a fulfilled and blessed week. Goodbye for now.